Hello, I'm Orion Samuelson on behalf of ADMA, the Agricultural Driveline Manufacturers Association. I'd like to invite you to spend the next several minutes with me as we talk about a subject of great importance to you, to your family, and to your farm. Preventing accidents by using your drivelines safely and taking care of them properly. Experience shows that virtually all driveline-related farm accidents happen when drivelines are operated without shields or guards, or when they've been poorly maintained. This is a driveline, or a PTO as it's called by many of you, because it's attached to the tractor's power takeoff shaft. It has one function: to transmit power efficiently from your tractor to the implement you're pulling or the equipment you're operating. And it must operate safely across a wide range of performance demands and in different environmental conditions. That's the purpose of the driveline shielding system, which includes the tractor shield, driveline guards, and implement shield, as you see here. Because you use and are around drivelines almost daily, the purpose of this presentation is to help you use and maintain them carefully and thoughtfully, and to remind you to keep all protective shielding in place. To get started, let's look first at some basic do's and don'ts, some poor or unthinking operating practices that can adversely affect the safe or efficient operation of your PTO driveline. Don't expose the rotating parts of a driveline by removing or modifying the guards, or by cutting or enlarging the lubrication access holes to lubricate it. And don't remove the tractor master shield or the implement shield. Also remember that a protrusion anywhere is a potential catch point. So don't attach drivelines with bolts that are too long, because they can catch a loose thread, a bootlace, or a frayed cuff. When set screws or bolts are the recommended fasteners, use the correct length and follow the original implement manufacturer's recommendation.
Don't use PTO adapters on the tractor PTO shaft. Never operate 540 RPM implements at 1000 RPM or 1000 RPM implements at 540 RPM. Match the right tractor PTO spline and speed with the PTO drive shaft provided with the implement. This will assure proper geometry and operating speed.
Don't weld a large washer or other protruding device on the head of your hitch pin. In fact, use a hitch pin with a low head. And as you work, especially on uneven terrain or terraces, don't let the head of your hitch pin hit the driveline. Be especially careful. Remove top-mounted drawbar clevis straps. And if your drawbar has an offset end, be sure it's in the down position so it won't interfere with the driveline guard when you're using PTO equipment. Make sure your drawbar and three-point hitch are correctly positioned so neither interferes with the driveline. Raise and lock the three-point hitch when you're not using it. And don't allow a hose to drape over the driveline guard. The resulting friction can damage the hose or the guard or both. As you turn, pay attention that you don't hit the driveline with your tractor tires and don't bottom out. This usually happens in non-working situations. Don't let your driveline guards pull apart in operation. They'll get cut or crushed when pushed back together. Pay special attention when you're turning. And remember, your driveline is engineered for a specific implement and application. Store your equipment inside and keep your drivelines off the ground. Rust and mud interfere with the driveline locking device and can cause attachment problems. And you can unknowingly run over it with a tractor or other farm vehicle. To transport your driveline, first remove it from the implement if recommended by the manufacturer. If not, position and secure it as recommended for transport to prevent damage that could be caused if it were to bounce off and be dragged along or run over. The important role of proper driveline use, maintenance, and repair in farm safety cannot be overemphasized. Dr. William E. Field, Extension Safety Specialist at Purdue University's School of Agricultural Engineering, is a nationally recognized expert on the issue.
During the last 10 years, as we've studied power driveline accidents from cases all across the country, the thing that has become very apparent to me as the researcher in this area is that these injuries are extremely catastrophic in nature. Even though the number of injuries are fairly small on power driveline accidents, they result in just terrible injuries. We're talking about amputation, spinal cord injuries, talking about fatalities that frequently occur, and so the farmer needs to be made clearly aware that the injuries resulting from an entanglement of power takeoff can change their life forever. Every one of these injuries could have been prevented if the appropriate practices or the guarding was in place, or some element was missing, and that if it was taken care of, this injury wouldn't have taken place. One of the demonstrations that I use with farm audiences that seems to have an impact is I ask them how long would their shoelace have to be in order to respond in time enough to make a decision to get out of an entanglement. And on one side of the boot I'll have a shoelace that's about 12 inches long, and then I calculate on the blackboard or overhead how long the shoelace would have to be if the normal reaction time would be around 3 seconds. And we're looking at a shoelace that's somewhere around 30 feet long. So by the time a farmer makes a decision or recognizes that he has a shoelace wrapped around the power driveline and does something about it, he's had 30 feet of shoelace pulled into the driveline, and most of us don't have shoelaces that are 30 feet long. And so by the time we make a decision, we've probably already revolved around the shaft 2 or 3 times. There appears to be 4 elements involved with preventing power driveline accidents. It starts right with the manufacturer of the driveline, to ensure that those drivelines that are manufactured and sold are the very best quality, and also have incorporated in them all the design features that ensure a safe product once it's in the field. Secondly, the manufacturers of farm implements who buy the drivelines to install on their products need to make sure that only the very best drivelines are installed on their machines, and that the owners of those machines eventually are provided with adequate information on both the care, maintenance, and safety of those drivelines. And then finally, or thirdly, there's the implement dealer that sells the product to the farmer, and he needs to be keenly aware that he has a role to play in making sure that every new product that's sold to a farmer is in good condition, it has all the guards in place when it leaves his dealership, and then when the implement is brought back in for repair or maintenance or for resale, that complete shielding is put back and that it's serviced and before it ever goes back on the lot or goes back to the farmer. And then finally, the farmer needs to recognize that the safety components of the driveline are just as important as the functional components. He needs to take the time to service those parts that may not allow the machine to run better, but ensure the safety of the operator when he is using the machine. And once we get the farmer convinced that the safety aspects of the machine are just as important as the part that make it work, then we're going to be a lot farther ahead in trying to keep the farmer from making the mistakes that lead to having an injury around the driveline. In our studies over the last 10 years, we found that older machinery plays a very important role in the number of power driveline accidents that do occur. We find as newer machines are being introduced with the safeguards that have been incorporated in them, we see a decline in the number of injuries and accidents that take place. The question of old equipment on farms is a rather complex one, and I think it's also kind of controversial today. But I think that there are some machines that were made back in the 40s, the late 40s, early 50s, that probably today, with our understanding of safety, should no longer be used and actually should be replaced. And I think that some farmers take an unacceptable level of risk when they continue to use a machine that was designed in a time when shielding wasn't quite so important, when function was far more important, and they ought to carefully consider replacing those machines, not just selling them to someone else, but actually removing them out of the workplace so that no one is ever exposed to those machines again.
Now, let's look at some basic safety checks that you should make part of your everyday routine. First, disengage your PTO shaft and turn off the power source on your tractor before you begin any inspection or repairs. As you know, One of the most important components of your driveline is here, the driveline shielding system. Don't even hook up your driveline unless all the shields are in place. To do so is to risk serious injury or death. Make sure the shield over the knuckle on the implement input shaft and the tractor master shield are in place. Make sure the driveline guard rotates and telescopes freely. And make sure it's properly lubricated. Next, follow the equipment manufacturer's recommendations for attaching the implement to your tractor, making sure the distance from the tractor PTO shaft to the hole in your drawbar conforms to the implement manufacturer's recommendation.
The PTO drive shaft provided with the implement must fit directly onto the tractor's PTO shaft without the use of adapters. If you have a 1,000 RPM implement, contact your implement dealer for the correct drive shaft or yoke to fit your tractor's 21 spline or 20 spline PTO. If the implement is capable of being converted from 540 to 1,000 RPM operation, or vice versa, contact your implement dealer for the parts necessary to do this properly and safely.
The driveline must be attached securely to both the tractor and the implement. If the guard has been provided with a chain to prevent guard rotation during operation, make certain it's attached properly to the implement or tractor. Check to ensure that shear bolts in use are as recommended by the implement manufacturer and that field replacements are on hand. And make certain that other overload protection devices, such as safety clutches, are operable and have been serviced according to the manufacturer's instructions. Before engaging the PTO, check to make sure that the implement's recommended operating speed will not be exceeded. As you know, maintenance of all shields, guards, and other safety devices is extremely important to safe machine operation. To replace guards, go to your implement dealer. Brand name original equipment manufacturer parts are recommended. Now, if the dealer is unable to supply the guarding you need, contact the implement manufacturer for a replacement. If the manufacturer is unable to supply the guarding you need, retrofits are available at dealers or farm stores. When replacing a guard, it's important to clean and lubricate the bearing groove, as you see here. As you replace a guard, be sure to attach this ADMA safety label to it and get new labels from your dealer to replace those that are worn or missing from the drive lines you're using back on the farm. If you have an old drive line which will not accept a guard, replace the drive line. Your implement dealer will be glad to help you. Just ask. One last important don't. Don't modify the driveline when you repair or replace it. Every driveline is engineered and manufactured to a specific implement application. They are not interchangeable. And a reminder, whatever you do, don't operate the driveline without all proper shielding systems in place. That means the tractor shield, driveline guards, and implement shield. You have too much to lose. This area is a danger zone, and it may well be the most dangerous area on your farm, for you and for every member of your family. We know that most driveline-related farm accidents occur during the day and near the house, but evenings are particularly dangerous, especially when it's dark and cold, and you're tired and in a hurry to get finished. If you're not paying attention, if the kids are playing while you're working, if it's too dark to see, if you're too tired, or if you're thinking about something else, even for an instant, you're an accident looking for a place to happen. Listen.
I told Mom and Dad that Dick had had a power takeoff accident, and my dad said, "What happened, Mary? Dick is always so careful." And I said, "Yes, but he wasn't careful enough today." And I think that's very important, that farmers need to remember that they have to be careful every day in each and every moment.
you can imagine, this is where the power takeoff shaft came from the tractor. And as you can see, this is an older tractor and was not equipped with the master shield like the newer tractors are now. The first mistake I made was I stood up on the drawbar like this, reached up and turned on the key, not checking to see if everything had been throttled down and the power takeoff had been turned off. It hadn't, and as I hit that key, everything started taking off, and I had boots on with laces at the time, and the lace got caught up in the knuckle, and I no longer wear boots with laces, and I wear slip-on boots now, and it caught me, and it took my left leg and wrapped it around the shaft like taking a piece of string and wrapping it around your finger. And when it couldn't wrap my leg anymore, it started taking my whole body and just taking me around and around and around. And it was, you know, everything was turned upside down. I could see day and night and everything. It continuously, you know, bashed my head into the ground. Fortunately, it didn't knock me unconscious. And I reached out somehow to try to turn off the power takeoff lever here. And I couldn't reach it the first time I tried. But the next time it was like my fingers grew and I reached up there and got it and just hung on. And as it was twisting me around, it came to a shut off, and I was laying there upside down wrapped in the power takeoff. They did about 5.5, 6 hours of surgery and were able to reconstruct my left leg from the knee on down and put it back together. But I came out of it with saying, thank God I'm alive, but with the words from the doctor saying, Dick, there's a good chance that you're going to always have to wear some type of a brace to be able to walk again. And he says the chance of you running again are, you know, I wouldn't even think about it at all. And at the time, running was the least of my concerns. I was glad I was alive. And I said, set a goal, and that was to hopefully be able to walk again without the use of a brace. And fortunately, I've been able to do that.
The lesson? There are several. As a farmer with important family responsibilities, you must exercise extreme caution, especially when you're operating machinery. Stay as far away from a rotating driveline as possible, and get near only when and if it's absolutely necessary. Keep bystanders completely away too. As an adult and a parent, you have an obligation to keep children away from an operating driveline. There is no reason, no need, and no excuse for a child to be doing anything anywhere near any operating equipment. Make that a rule that's rigorously enforced on your farm. As you've just heard, all it takes is a fraction of a second for a frayed cuff, a shoelace, or even a strand of hair to become almost instantaneously entangled in an operating machine. Don't wear loose-fitting clothes. Avoid flappy windbreakers and jackets with long drawstrings. And if you have long hair, keep it tucked securely under a hat or cap. Never step across a driveline, especially an operating driveline. Don't use the tractor drawbar or the implement tongue as a step when the driveline is operating. And never use the driveline as a step. Pay attention to your working environment. Being outside when it's windy, wet, cold, and dark increases your risks. And when you're too tired to work, stop. Fatigue is a warning you should never ignore. Stationary tractors and equipment deserve your special attention. If the tractor can creep away, or if the equipment can move, you run the risk of the driveline coming apart or extending beyond the manufacturer's recommendation, with potentially disastrous results. There are many ways to operate safely here. Use the technique or procedure recommended by your implement or equipment manufacturer and obey all warnings and instructions. ADMA, the Agricultural Driveline Manufacturers Association, was formed to promote increased driveline safety on farms like yours by farmers like you. ADMA's members have worked closely within the agricultural equipment industry to develop new standards for safety and performance. They've improved driveline design and taken advantage of technological improvements to enhance safety. And they've sponsored, conducted, and funded safety-oriented research into the design and use, as well as maintenance and repair of agricultural drivelines. Over the years, ADMA has produced and distributed thousands of these safety signs as personal reminders, and thousands of educational safety posters have been distributed to schools, 4-H clubs, and other organizations. It's important to remember that today's Driveline is engineered, designed, and built to operate safely on a specified implement and for its unique applications. Its performance is backed by extensive testing and research. And don't forget that keeping all your farm equipment in good condition is good business, and it makes for better farming too. Use it safely, in safe conditions, and be aware of others' safety as well as your own. Working together, the members of ADMA and the farm machinery manufacturers are providing state-of-the-art agricultural equipment. But the best equipment in the world is nothing more than a tool for you to use on a productive, efficient, and safe farm. Use it wisely and safely, and in good health. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Orion Samuels.